Welcome to Grapple Arts Radio.
Hi everybody, it's Stephan from Grapple Arts Radio and grapplearts.com. Today I'm interviewing my very good friend and one of the best training partners I've ever had, and he's also an excellent teacher, which is why I'm interviewing him, Ritchie Yip. So thanks for coming on the podcast, Ritchie.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me. This is great. This is really cool.
Yeah, we've been training together for how long now?
10 years.
Yeah, at least.
Man. Yeah, I actually remember how we met. It was I was teaching for Tim Shears at the time, and you came down to do some training. I think you came down with maybe Adam Zuchak or something like that. It was a bunch of you guys, and I got to know you a little bit. And I knew that you were teaching privates to some people that I knew, and then I approached you to do a private. I was like, hey man, do you want to teach me? Do you want to, I'll pay you for a private. And then you came back by saying, it's like, well, you know what? It would actually be more valuable to me if you were just my training partner, which I thought was really flattering. And then, yeah, man, we just started training, and then, we started talking. We had a lot of things in common, and it's really, really cool that, you're sort of a part of, sort of my inner circle when I make business decisions and any problems that I have with Jiu-Jitsu, and you're my good buddy, and, we hang out and we chat and we share laughs, and it's all really, really neat. Yeah.
It's funny, that whole training partner thing. There's a lot of people you train with, but there aren't very many people that I would elevate to the status of training partner. That's special, because there's a lot of people who are willing to scrap and roll with you, but if you say something like, I'm having trouble finishing this armbar in this way, to have somebody that you can then sit down and go through that technique with and try and find all the little ways that you might tweak it, and to have somebody who's aware enough to give you good feedback and say, dude, you're totally screwing up with your leg position. That's so valuable.
No, I couldn't agree more. You look at different ways of looking at training partners, and the way that I sort of look at it is that it's kind of like Aristotle actually defines friendship, and he actually defines it in 3 different aspects. In the sense that the lowest level, it's almost like a business friendship, where maybe me and this other guy work in a shop together, or me and this other guy work in the same office together, and that's sort of like a business relationship or a business friendship. And then we have like an activity friendship, which is the next level that Aristotle talked about, where it's kind of like we go fishing together. This is my drinking buddy, or we go bowling together. And then there's the next level where it's a deeper kind of a friendship. I think Aristotle calls it a universal friendship, where you're totally honest with the person. You can say things that would probably hurt their feelings, but you're saying it out of love and out of the friendship. Right? There's a high degree of trust. And I personally believe that there are training partners in the sense that we just share the mat with one another. It's just like, you're in Richie's class, I'm in Richie's class. Let's, work on our arm bars together. There's that, right? And then there's the type of training partner where it's like, hey, what are you doing this Sunday? Let's get together. I have keys for the school. Let's get together, and I'd really like to work on ABC, and we'll get together and we'll work on something that's mutually beneficial for the both of us. And then, to me, I think that has graduated to more of a universal friendship, where it's deeper and it's just stronger and it's just more layered, right? And not only does that exist in Jiu-Jitsu, as certainly for myself, like you and me, we started off as, training partners, but then, we're best buds now. And I think that I see that just like in my school and other schools where people just started off just training with one another, and all of a sudden there's this great friendship, and there's like this little family that's developed. And I think that jiu-jitsu, martial arts, whatever, right? Hunting and fishing, whatever, it garners a certain relationship amongst people, right? So I think it's really neat.
Back when I was training in Kempo, which is a full contact karate Kempo system, it's very dangerous to train because you're actually hitting your partners full force, throwing them.
Wow, that's kick-ass. Yeah.
There's a high potential for injury, and I was injured several times, as were just about everybody I trained with.
Wow.
There was a saying there that good practitioners tend to develop in small groups because you need another body to train with. You do need people to train with, but if you have too many people, then it's you don't really know what you're dealing with. You don't have that intrinsic trust and knowledge of the other person's limits. A small group of people looks out for each other more than a big anonymous group of people. And I'm wondering how that translates. That was just the opinion within that martial art. Yeah. And it was true of my experience in Kempo. I think Jiu-Jitsu is I mean, it obviously has the potential to be dangerous. We've all
absolutely.
gotten injured.
Absolutely, for sure.
But somehow, and it does seem that people get better. The people who get better often can attribute it to, yeah, I trained with a lot of people, but here's the 5 people or the 10 people that I trained with most. And
Yeah, well,
they really helped me.
I mean, yes, I totally understand. Jiu-Jitsu is inherently dangerous. You are choking one another. You're breaking each other's arms, right? And there's a very high level of danger. That's unquestionable. Let's talk about like the small group first, because I see that I think there's a handful of questions in that statement, Stephan. Within a large group, you'll always have a smaller group that you just bond with, right? So out of 100 people, maybe you'll know like 20 really, really well, and then out of that 20, maybe even like a smaller group, maybe like 4 like truly like their character in and out, right? And then
your BFFs, if
yes,
boys
yeah.
are allowed to have BFFs,
the
which
BFFs,
they probably
right?
not.
So you have 4 BFFs, and then you'll have like 20 BFs. I don't know how this all breaks down. And then you'll have like 80 people that you're polite to. You wave to them in the elevator or whatever, right? You shake hands politely and say hi to them. You don't know them that well. And the thing is that within a martial arts school, and I do my very best, and as my little school is growing and there's more people on the mats and whatnot, maintaining that trust, that level of camaraderie with a larger group is a major concern of mine, and I do my very best. There's some things that I'm really trying to do, like with my higher belts, with the more senior people in the room. I'm trying to get it so that way. Yes, I want them to train with one another because they've been training with one another for years, and I believe that they thoroughly enjoy each other's company and they like training with one another. But I think it's very specific that they go and then they train with some of the more junior students as well, because that level of trust is passed on immediately just because of the fact that they're very genuine, they're very generous. Right? They take care of their training partner, and that is passed on in a very intangible way, right?
So if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is not only as a head instructor are you responsible for conveying the techniques, but you're also to some extent responsible for orchestrating the social dynamics.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, for sure.
The school.
Stephan.
And
I absolutely.
the conductor.
Yes. Oh, for sure. You are a conductor. You are an orchestrator of the environment, and as an instructor, relaying information is a minor part of the job. I started training jiu-jitsu in '97. My very first class was at a Megaton Diaz seminar in SFU. It was April of '97, and there was no YouTube. You couldn't even get VHS instructionals. Well, you could, but you'd have to pay like hundreds of dollars.
$400 for
yeah.
6 DVD, for 6 VHS sets.
Oh yeah, exactly. And they weren't even that great, man. They weren't even that great. And my point is that now there is nothing but information. There is such great content for free on YouTube. There's not enough time to watch it all. And so before, information like jiu-jitsu was such a kind of more of a secretive art. You really didn't want to show people how you set up that armbar because they would then learn how to counter it and use it against you. It's more secretive. Now there is so much information that, as the role of an instructor, me dispensing information really isn't the goal. It really isn't the purpose.
Curating. When it comes to information, you're more of a curator.
Ultimately, yes, Stephan, absolutely. Instead of me showing, here's an armbar, steps 1 through 5. Here's me showing armbar, steps 1 through 5. But how I would get here is from an arm drag, a back take, a front trip, right? Once I have the back, the person's defending the back, now I'm able to do the armbar.
So it's
right.
There's a saying related to the internet that when content is infinite, the context is everything.
Right.
So you're providing the context for the infinite amount of information.
I believe that I'm providing context for the information. I'm putting it in almost like a story. This is how you would get here, and as well, I am orchestrating the dynamic, the feel of the training environment, because it doesn't take too much where certain environments become caustic. And I've seen it in training environments, in martial arts training environments, I've seen it in work environments where it was lovely, it was great, it was euphoric, all these people working together. People had triadic relationships where I knew this person, I knew that person, everybody knew one another. It was great. And then I've been involved in circumstances where I like you, but I don't like you, right? And right away, you create a scenario where people aren't sharing information, people aren't giving up their time, right? Freely. Injuries, that's when injuries occur, where I just don't like you. So it's indifferent to me whether I break your arm or not. But if I genuinely like you and care about you, I've been to your home, I've met your kids, I'm going to do everything I possibly can, when we roll, to keep you safe. Like, still interact, do jiu-jitsu, right? If you give up your arm, if you're exposed for a choke, I'm going to tap you out because I want to make sure that
you keep it honest.
I keep it honest.
We're
absolutely.
keeping it real.
We have to keep it real. Absolutely. And you look at the Pierre Berton interview with Bruce Lee, and Pierre Berton, I'm paraphrasing. It's been a long time since I've seen this interview, but Pierre Berton asks Bruce Lee, what is a martial art? And Bruce Lee says in a response, a martial art is a way for me to honestly express myself. And that, to me, and when I first heard it was years ago. I was like a kid, and I didn't really get it. But now I do, because you cannot fake doing jiu-jitsu. You can't fake being skilled at jiu-jitsu no more than you can fake knowing how to surf or speaking Spanish. Right?
Unlike Death Touch, I can fake being
sure.
I would show you all this, but
I don't want you to be hurt.
Killed 4 people last week. And so I'm a very merciful person, so I'm not even going to show you these techniques, because even being in the same room as me when I'm practicing.
I can feel it. The fear, the anxiety.
Well, we're going to talk about teaching and learning and the dynamics of a school, but let's take it back to the beginning. Who have you trained with and learned from in your martial arts journey?
Present company, that's the first, you're the first person that comes to mind. Like, you're my training partner, you're my instructor. You're very honest, when I screw up, you don't care about my feelings. And there's something about that which I think is really genuine, right? It's like, this wouldn't work in a million years. Or you're like, I think you're doing this, even though sometimes I'm like, man, you could probably phrase that a little bit, more of a friendly manner, but whatever, the bluntness. And also, there's such a finite amount of time. You're busy, I'm busy. Times where I'm not an instructor, I'm not a teacher. This is about me, my art. I'm just training. I'm just a student. I'm just some dude on the mat. It's so rare that I can do that. So there's no time to, save my feelings, right? It's just like, this wouldn't work. And this is the reason why. And so I've learned a lot from you and just our training sessions and stuff.
As have I, just to be fair.
Oh, that's nice. That's great.
Less about me, more about you.
Okay, thank you. I love talking about myself. I don't know if you've noticed.
It's a talent.
Yeah, it's my gift. So I have to give credit to Tim Shears and Trevor Clarkson. Started off training with Tim Shears years ago. He's the person who brought Gracie Baja to Vancouver, and I hated jiu-jitsu. I was like, this is stupid, man. What are we doing? We're rolling around. Doesn't even make sense. Like, this is absurd. And also, I had no natural ability. I felt like I was just flopping around. And I truly do. I honestly, for the very first 3 years, I really feel like a fish on a dock. Like, I was just flopping around. I was just kind of like rolling around on these mats with these sweaty dudes. I didn't even know what I was doing.
Doing it because you had to do it, or doing it because you?
Yeah, I felt some social pressure from it, just because Tim was doing it, and he was like, "This is important. The world's changing, right?" And at that time, the martial arts world, really was changing. The idea that Wing Chun Kung Fu was the martial art. That's silly. And how there's really only one way to fight, as Bruce Lee was saying before. It's just human being against human being, right? Unless there was some dude with like 5 arms, right? All of a sudden, that's when we would have a new style. But fighting is fighting is fighting, and that includes rolling on the ground. And yeah, admittedly, they really pressured me to do it. Like, you got to keep on doing it. Come on. And I would. I was young. I was like 21 when I first started doing jiu-jitsu, and I was like, oh man, come on, let's do some boxing. And Tim basically nagged me to get on the mat, and I did, and I kept on doing it, right? I think the reason is probably because everybody else is doing it. Everybody else in the club was doing jiu-jitsu, so I was like, okay, well, I don't want to be the one person who's not, right? So I kept on doing it, and let's see, took 3.5 years to get my blue belt, right? So pretty long time, and really, we were just, there was no YouTube, there was very few resources, and the ones that did exist were rather poor and pretty expensive. And so really, man, when I say like the first 3 years, I was just kind of flopping around on the mat. I really do feel that. And then in 3.5 years, I got my blue belt. I think that was 2000 is when I got my blue belt. And what was really significant, actually, I thought that was really funny, is in 2000, I think that's when BJ Penn, after 3.5 years of training jiu-jitsu, got his black belt and won the Mundials or whatever. And I remember going to the club. It was Trevor Clarkson's club, and he had this little club in a warehouse in Richmond. And I remember going there, and everybody was talking about this BJ guy, this BJ Penn, and how he got his black belt in 3.5 years and is totally legit because he just won the Mundials. I was thinking, what? I've been training jiu-jitsu for 3.5 years, and I'm a blue. How is that possible? But there are the outliers out there, right? And there's BJ Penn, who is exceptionally gifted and highly athletic and had the best coaching in the whole world, and highly dedicated, and was able to go and commit huge amounts of his time to studying the art and whatnot. And I just thought it was just so interesting that here we are, and also Tim, when he started training me, when he started teaching me, he was a high white belt, and I was a white belt, and Trevor was a blue belt at the time. And what I thought was so significant was Tim was, even though I'm taller than him a little bit, we were about the same weight. And how when we would roll, I honestly felt like he could kill me if he wanted to. I felt defenseless, like just because he had more time in the pit. He had more time on the mats, maybe I don't even know how long, 2, 3, I have no idea how much more time he had over me. But it's amazing how a day one beginner with zero jiu-jitsu, or maybe like a handful of weeks of jiu-jitsu, is completely dominated by somebody with a year of jiu-jitsu. I thought that was staggering to me. I thought it was breathtaking. And, it does really
it's a very visceral demonstration of the effectiveness of the art.
I think so, absolutely. I also think that that's a part of the beauty of jiu-jitsu, in the sense that you can spar, you can roll, and you can feel the art almost immediately. And I think the importance of rolling, I think, is critical, right? If you're an absolute beginner, I think it's important to, wait about a month. And that's what I generally say. If somebody comes in, they're there for the very first class or their first few classes or whatever, I usually say something like, okay, I walk up to them, I go, hey, what did you think of the class? Chat with them a little bit. And then I'm like, okay, well, we're going to start the open mat right now. You can hang out, you can drill, you can grab a training partner and work what we just discussed during the class, but maybe wait about a month or so before you actually start to roll. Otherwise, you just wouldn't even know what you're doing, right? And, I want people to feel like they can at least be interactive, they can at least have some degree of a conversation, as opposed to it being like an overwhelming lecture by one person. One person's talking, the other person's, just sitting quietly and very docile.
Well, maybe that depends more on your demographic. If you had somebody who was highly athletic and alpha male, or
sure,
I mean, there you'd have a different concern, and that's them getting in there and spazzing out and hurting somebody, or hurting themselves. But really, absolutely, it would be a useful experience for them to feel.
That's interesting.
To feel it hands on and sort of, I don't want to say beat down, but get a little bit of a beat down.
Like the term beat down refers more so to the idea that you need to be the nail before you're the hammer, and that's critical for all martial arts. And it's ultimately that's how it works in life. You don't get the big corner office with the windows day one out of college, right? You don't have to do a lot of grunt work, and then you eventually build it up. And the same thing works with martial arts. And nobody is above the process And I think it's one, as a teacher, it's critical to explain to students, because a lot of people get frustrated when they get tapped out. And my point
you could
is,
do Tai Chi for 20 years and never really get an attitude adjustment, never really get your ass kicked or get armbarred.
Absolutely. And the one thing I think, well, I was going to say the main thing that I've learned from Jiu-Jitsu, but there's many things that the art has taught me and given me. And one of the things that the art has provided for me is a deep sense of humility, because just having my school, teaching in front of a room full of people who are paying me, that's pretty sweet, right? It's pretty sweet. And then going and starting open mat and knowing everybody's game, because I'm their instructor, I've probably taught them their game, right? Knowing what they're going to do and then being able to tell them that really bolsters your confidence, your ego. But then I roll with you and you get me in a knee bar and you tap me a few more times with an ankle. And I rolled with Mike Lee last week, and how I've been working on my bottom cross-side escape. So I've been getting pretty good. I'm like, wow, like really, really consistent, really tough for people to pin me down from a strong position. And rolled with Mike Lee last week, and
bloody judo background.
Yeah. And man, and I weigh him by, I'd say, 10, 15 pounds or so. Right. And Mike Lee, who, helped me get my black belt, was my instructor for a long time and my good friend. And Mike, he got top cross side and I could not escape, and he armbarred me. And that sense of like, wow, like you can always get tapped out, and to embrace that. I think it's brought upon a huge degree of humility, and how to embrace the tap out and how not to be fearful of it as well. I think it's really important for students, and especially when students are new and they're not aware of this process, that, okay, what's going to happen is for the first 6 months of jiu-jitsu, you're not even going to know what you're going to do. Like, you have no idea what it is that you're doing. You're going to feel lost. You're going to feel like you're drowning, that everything that you do makes it worse. That's how it's going to feel, right? But I'm going to be there. Your other training partners are going to be there. Everybody in the room has all experienced this. Right? Everybody goes through this, and they will have deep understanding, and they will be there to help you. They'll be there to guide you. They'll be able to talk you through. Sometimes I call them locker talks, right? Because it's sometimes conversations happen in the change rooms after the open mat session. People are just talking and whatnot, and that's where the rest of the team goes. Listen, we all go through it. Jiu-Jitsu is frustrating, but that's how you grow as an individual, by being able to surpass that frustration. And explain to people that during your first 6 months, you're going to get tapped out a lot, and it's a part of the process, and nobody is above it. Nobody's above it. And there's lots of people who are profoundly athletic. They have these natural gifts. At the end of the day, martial arts is it's an acquired skill. You're not born knowing how to do an omoplata. So your athleticism, your explosiveness, your natural body composition, it will only take you so far. There'll be a moment in time where you'll need coaching, and everybody, as a teacher, every single student offers a very unique opportunity for me to expand my scope as a teacher, in the sense that a student who spends 60 hours a week in front of a computer, played soccer when they were like a teenager, but really hasn't worked out since they were 17, right? And now they're 35.
They have that image of themselves as an athlete still in the back of their mind.
Exactly. I was pretty good when I was in high school. You haven't heard of me, but I'll tell you, if I were to get into this fighting thing, I'd be pretty awesome, right? And then, they feel like, what? I'm going to do it. I'm actually going to go and start doing jiu-jitsu, and they come in.
Then boom.
Right? And then it's like, man, this image, because we all, the image of myself, even though at the time of this recording I'm 38, my interpretation is like, I'm in my 20s. Like, that's how I feel. Like, I feel like I'm just in my 20s, right? And even though I'm grayer and I have more injuries, my body aches more than it should. But the person who comes in and they have these illusions about themselves, or misinterpretations perhaps, or perceptions. That's probably a better term to use. They have these perceptions about themselves, and they have these, and they're frustrated because they can't learn it right away, or they're getting tapped out. And for me, I just have to say, it's like, I just have to encourage them to keep on going, because it's a part of the learning process.
For some highly competitive people, that frustration drives them. The most naturally talented, or the grappler that I've known who had the most natural ability was Gordon McKinnon. He was a Vancouver firefighter for many years. He was an Olympic level wrestler. He would have probably gone to the Olympics, I think it was 1980, when the Western countries boycotted the Olympics because of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. So he basically been training, done really well at all the levels up to the Olympics. Then switched over to rugby, and I think he was voted, in the top 10 rugby players in the entire world. So not bad for a Canadian dude.
Sure. Wow, amazing.
And just a fearsome athlete. And I remember when he came in to train for his very first time, I was training with a blue belt. It was back in the day when, oh my God, there's a blue belt in town. Oh, he must be really, really good.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
It was Shemek Wallach.
I know Shemek, yeah. Great guy. Nice
and who's now in California. Anyone in California, have Shemek's personal trainer. And Shemek triangle choked him on his first class. That was Shemek's signature move. And now Gord was more than 200 pounds, just absolutely chiseled from granite.
Sure.
Ultra conditioned. He was also he competed in the Firefighter Combat Challenge. He's now the over 50 world CrossFit champion. So it's a lifetime of conditioning.
Amazing. Good for him.
Grappling, fighting. Yet he got choked out in his first Jiu-Jitsu session. And I often wonder, would he have continued in Jiu-Jitsu? Would it have had any interest for him if he hadn't gotten choked out by somebody that was smaller than him, weaker than him, not as athletic as him?
Interesting.
And so for that ultra competitive type, I think that really helped. Okay, there is some technique here. It's not just a natural athleticism.
Well, absolutely. I think it's how you frame that experience. I think that's the key thing. And as an instructor, as sort of the leader of the groups, so the one that sort of facilitates the dynamic in the school, I think it's really critical for people to understand that experience, it's a positive thing. So because there's people who, because they're so naturally gifted and they have this amazing athleticism, that them getting triangled, them feeling defeated, it will just slaughter them. It will just crush them, and they won't be able to face it, right? And they'll just leave, right? And there are those, if given the right encouragement, saying that this is validation of the art is not like you're being defeated. You're having an experience, right?
And the instructor really has to. I mean, obviously, some people are going to have that. I'm crushed, my ego can't handle this, I'm leaving experience, no matter what you tell them. That's going to be, the 10% of people who walk in through the door, they get tapped out, they're leaving, there's nothing you can do about that. But for the remaining 90%, 80%, it's really the instructor that sets that context. And is it okay to tap? That's probably a conversation. I'm amazed how many people start jiu-jitsu and they never get explained, okay, this is called tapping out. It's just assumed that that they already know it.
Yeah.
It's just assumed that they already know not to attach too much value to it.
Yeah.
But I can think of a lot of injuries that have happened for brand new people.
Yeah.
Who
didn't even know.
Who had no idea. Like, oh, my arm's hurting. Oh, it's really hurting. Now
absolutely. And you know what? I'll tell you, as a teacher, I've sort of changed my approach and my style of introducing beginners to jiu-jitsu over the years. And the formula that I use is that for every single person that comes through the door, they actually get an initial private first, right? Before I used to do it myself, but now that's virtually impossible. There's not enough time in the day.
Getting the second school going and all that.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like me as, Ritchie Yip, rabid capitalist, dominating the world with his chain of schools. No, we're opening up a second little school, modest little school in Burnaby, and I'm very happy about that. I'm very proud of myself, to be quite honest, to have this opportunity and to be able to go and expand a little bit. But all new students do a private, and they do it with our instructors and whatnot, who are the senior students of the school. And it provides a fantastic opportunity for the senior students, some of the more junior instructors to have more experience teaching. I think it's a great low barrier way for people to get into teaching just by doing privates. For those of you listening that have aspirations to teach, it may be quite daunting teaching a group class of 25 people right out of the gates. It's really tough. Like for me, it was. I'm just being honest. You know, if you have no fears about public speaking, great, have at her. But for me, it was terrifying, like sweat-inducing. Taking the SkyTrain, down to teach class. I was like, oh man, I got to teach class, and like pouring with sweat because of the anxiety. And it took a long time to get over that. But teaching privately, it really helped me understand the material deeper, and also just got me comfortable maintaining that role of an instructor as the instructor. But for the complete newbie, the person who has no idea what jiu-jitsu is.
You're onboarding. You now have an onboarding process.
Yes, absolutely. And how people don't know how to tap. Like they have no idea. And I think
we're so immersed in it.
Right, absolutely. And that as a teacher,
correct.
because of the fact that you and I live and breathe this stuff, it's almost like a curse. It's the knowledge that we have, the deep understanding that we have. It's this fallacy where we just assume that the other person already knows this. How could you not know how to do a Chimera from the closed guard? Right? How do you not know how to reposition your body to be able to get a better angle on that ankle lock? How do you not know that? Well, people don't know that. And when we have this knowledge and we have such a deep understanding of it, it's almost a curse. And now we make no assumptions. We just pretend the person absolutely has no idea what jiu-jitsu is. They've never even heard of the term, right? And they have no idea what the guard is. And I encourage people my instructors to explain it from that level. And
Well, I'm just thinking that this ties in very, very well with an article that you just published on your blog.
Oh, thanks
called
for
the 77.
Thank you. I was going to shamelessly promote that myself, but thanks, Stephan, for throwing out
the 77 most common mistakes of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where you take many of these thoughts, and it's a free article. You don't have to opt in or anything. You just do a search for 77 Jiu-Jitsu mistakes or BJJ mistakes, and you find it. But in it, you take a lot of these ideas that are totally obvious to many black belts.
Sure.
But can hold your progress back for a very long time if you're a white belt, and because it's not obvious. These things aren't intuitive.
Oh, exactly.
If it was intuitive, then Royce Gracie wouldn't have won UFC 1 because the bigger, stronger people would have intuitively known what to do.
For sure.
Intuitively done them.
Absolutely. And exactly. There are common mistakes that we all do, right? And even though we are aware of them, we know what they are, sometimes we just need to be reminded, right? And it's the same for me as well. Like just going to that Eric Paulson seminar that you and I went to just on the weekend, how many details that he talked about that I was like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about that subtlety. And like I'm aware of it, but you forget. There's just so much stuff out there. And as I teach fundamental is a better term than basic.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Right? And when I teach fundamental techniques, and I teach that to the purple belts in the room, largely I'm infusing as much detail as possible specifically to the fundamental techniques, because there will be subtleties that person over there has forgotten, or that purple belt over there has forgotten. And I want to make sure that their technique is as clean and as thorough as possible.
So you're saying that when you're teaching to a class composed of, say, white belts, blue belts, purple belts, and brown belts, you're teaching the same technique, but you're teaching different things to different people. Right,
absolutely. So that's a great way to interpret it, and I never really thought of it that way, but ultimately, I guess that's true. If I were to teach a single technique, like a rear naked choke, when I teach something of that nature, what I generally do, because it's a fundamental technique,
sure,
I'll infuse...
It's probably ended more fights in MMA.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a technique that you cannot dismiss. Right? Whether you like the rear naked choke or not, it's like, I have a preference for more ankle locks. Doesn't matter. Right? Like, rear naked chokes have finished more fights, more tournaments, more submission tournaments, more MMA matches than any singular submission. So you have to address it. And you have to know it deep enough so that way you can defend against it. So what if I were to teach something like the rear naked choke? It's a fairly lengthy lesson. Now, I understand that there's some backlash against people who talk for a long time because the room is getting cold, meaning that energy levels are dropping and that people are physically getting cold as I'm talking for 5 minutes about a rear naked choke. I understand that. I think the benefit, however, outweighs the negatives. And as people are cooling off, there's a danger that they could get injured because, their muscles are cold now, their gi is wet, they're getting cold as they're sitting there watching me and listening to me. I understand that. But I think it's critical that I break down all of these subtleties. So if I ever teach a rear naked choke, I may mention, no joke, I may mention like 15, 20 subtleties. There'll be a day one beginner, they'll pick up 5, right? They'll like these, 3 to 5 things will speak to them.
Put your arm around the neck,
and squeeze.
And
Sure.
Squeeze.
Yeah, absolutely. There will be some subtleties where, like for the blue belt in the room, maybe there'll be 3 or 4 that will really speak to them. And then for the purple belt, I'm generalizing here, right? But my point is that as I'm doing the lesson for this particular technique, you will, if I say 15 things, 3 components, that person will absorb 3 components. That group of people will absorb 3 components, and the final group of people will absorb. And there'll be superfluous stuff that people will just forget, and they'll never be able to remember in a million years. And that's fine, right? And that's fine.
It's the nature of the beast.
That's the nature of the beast. And also, I'm a huge proponent of having a class with mixed levels. I don't believe in, this is our fundamentals class and this is our advanced class. You cannot come to the advanced class without whatever, 4 stripes on your white belt or whatever, right? I actually don't believe that at all. And the reason why I believe that is a couple of different reasons. One, as a teacher, it challenges me more because if I provide a lesson, I need to provide a lesson where I need to be able to speak to the day one beginner, the beginner who is having troubles tying their belt. And I need to be able to speak to the purple belts in the room who are months away from attaining their brown belt, right? I need to be able to go and keep everybody captivated. I need to be able to go and challenge people and also challenge them without getting to the point where they're completely confused and they're anxiety riddled. And that's a real challenge for an instructor. That's a real challenge for an instructor. But that's where I truly feel that I'm a curator for the art, in the sense that I'm taking the information that is available for free on the internet. You don't even need my help. You don't even need me. But I'll take all that information and I'll sculpt it in a way that's intriguing, interesting, and I'll put it into context. And I provide a safe haven for you to be able to do this with mats and training partners that you like and you like training with. And I think that is truly what I provide. There's another reason, Stephan, that I'm a huge proponent on having mixed levels in the group class. It's critical when we start to roll that what was your friend's name again? Gord McKinnon. Gord McKinnon. For Gord McKinnon to be able to feel jiu-jitsu, right? To be able to go and get tapped out by somebody who is, they're, physical inferior, so to speak, and to be able to feel the art, right? Where Gord's size, strength, his musculature did not help him. It helped him to a certain degree, of course, but there were certain limitations to that. And then they feel the art and they have a deep appreciation for the art. If it's just a class of white belts, when it's time to start the open mat, what happens? Who normally dominates a roll between white belt and white belt?
The bigger, the stronger,
Absolutely.
the heavier, the more aggressive.
The person who has more tenacity, the person who's bigger, stronger, bigger muscles, bigger biceps, that's the person who's going to win. Now, what does that do? It reinforces the fact that it's just like, wow, I am tapping people out by using my muscles. This is great. I'll just use more muscles.
Clearly, I need to go hit the weights more often.
Absolutely. However, somebody who comes in and they're 215 pounds covered in muscle and they are being ragdolled by somebody who has 8 years of jiu-jitsu and weighs 40 pounds less than them, right? Smaller, shorter, less hair, whatever, right? Makes less money, whatever. And they're getting dominated. They can feel the art. And then the art is reinforced. And the fact that it's like, wow, leverage, things like body positioning, weight displacement, balance, these things are enforced. And then the use of their strength is actually, there's no argument to it. They're like, wow, when it's the old, I forget who said it. who said it. Like, tell me I'll forget, show me I may remember, involve me and I'll understand. I can say it, but until you feel the art, you actually roll with somebody, and somebody who is smaller and weaker than you, and you dwarf them with your size, your strength, your athleticism, and man, they're sweeping you like a hardwood floor and tapping you out like a beer keg. You know, it's like, wow, this is, you know, then you can actually feel the art, and it resonates.
To be the devil's advocate, and it's I have my own answer to this, but I'm going to ask the question of probably on most people's minds listening to this. What about advanced techniques? Let's just pick, say, the cartwheel guard pass, right? You're not going to teach the cartwheel guard pass to a day one beginner.
You can. You can, right? And I'm a huge proponent also. I'm also a huge proponent of the hardest first style of teaching, where I'm all about the basics and I'm all about the fundamentals. That's critical. That's critical. However, by teaching hardest first techniques, the idea behind that is.
Can you give an example?
We can Umaplata is a great example. So to some out there, Umaplata is an advanced technique. If you're a beginner, you've done like maybe a month or two of Jiu-Jitsu, doing the Umaplata may feel as if you're trying to learn Mandarin, right? It's just this weird technique. However, the key thing when I teach Umaplata is that it's not so much the submission, right? It's not so much the end goal. When I'm teaching it, what I'm trying to demonstrate are certain principles of body positioning, of posture, of leverage, of large muscles versus small ones. The Umaplata, you're basically attaching your entire body to their arm, and you're trying to use your entire body against a really small muscle that creates internal rotation. I forget what that muscle. I think it's called your supraspinatus, right?
One of the rotators.
Yeah, one of the rotators, and like physiotherapists are going to be emailing you. The Ritchie Yip is stupid. He don't know nothing. Anyways, whatever. Small muscle, right? And using.
Don't tell Ritchie. He'll tap you out.
Yeah. Any complaints? Please email me at. Anyways, yeah, you're using large muscles against small ones, and so when you are teaching advanced techniques, you're infusing it as a teacher. You're infusing it with a ton of principles, as opposed to here it is, boom, Umaplata. You want to see it again? Bam, here it is again. Right, one more time. Ready? So that's great for visual learners. If you can see a technique and duplicate it right away, fantastic. That's awesome. You have a gift, or you're more of an advanced practitioner. However, most people in the room, for those of you who have a school, or those of you who are involved in the school, if you look around, most people on the mats will be, like a year or two. A gross majority of the people on the mats, year, 2 years, 3 years, and then like a small. It's
a pyramid. It starts out.
I think so.
Wide base at the bottom and goes up. But let's get. Oh, okay. You're talking about the visual learning. Okay. So let's just go into that for a half sec. Oh, sorry, I'm going to let you complete your thought.
No, this is fine. It's fine. I'm listening. Yeah.
We've got visual learners, which is people who learn by seeing. We've got auditory learners, people who prefer to hear their information. Sure. We've got kinesthetic learners, people who like to feel something when they're, if they're learning a tennis swing or a tennis stroke, they'd like, the coach to hold their hand and move it through the right vector so that they can actually feel where they're supposed to be.
Right.
So how then do you teach to those different types of learning? I thought that's where you were going to go with
Yes. I kind of was, but then I got sidetracked. And thanks for sort of corralling my thoughts here, Stephan. So absolutely. So you have visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learners. When you're doing a private, let's talk about the private, and we'll talk about the group class. The private offers certain benefits in the sense that auditory, you can really explain the technique in depth. It's all about you. It's just you and me in the room, and we can, talk 55 minutes on, the proper body positioning.
If that's the way that person.
Exactly. If that's the way that the person learns. Kinesthetically, obviously, very easy because you are doing the technique to them. They are doing the technique to you. So you can make adjustments. You can, if you have a student that's doing an armbar to you and they are too in line and they need to be more of a perpendicular angle, you can literally grab the collar of their gi and yank them over.
Into the right position.
Into the right position, for sure.
Feel it.
Absolutely. So they can feel it. from a private, being a visual learner really, really is tough because one, you can't really see a whole lot when you're doing jiu-jitsu. You got some dude on top of you. But as well, you can't really see anything, right? Because it's just the two of you. This is the reason why sometimes doing a private with 3 people, training in a triangle really, really helps, because I can go to you, Stephan, and I can do the technique to you. I can have you do it to me, and then I can jump in with your training partner and I can demonstrate with them. And that way you can be a visual learner by seeing how I demonstrate the technique. So doing a private, and it's just you and the other person, sometimes I use what I call the invisible training partner, and I just kind of shadow it. Right? I'm just like, imagine me in someone's guard. I'm doing it this way, so that way I'm
here with my invisible friend.
Yeah, exactly. And I have a vivid imagination. Only helps in jiu-jitsu. Only in jiu-jitsu. No other elements of my life. So, anyways, moving right along with jiu-jitsu, with the private, I usually use the invisible training partner. Sometimes even in the group class, I will use the invisible training partner as well, simply because there are certain movements where my demonstration partner, because of the fact that they may be on my legs, much like the omoplata, right? There's a point in time where their chest is resting on your trailing leg. Sometimes I will do a demonstration with an invisible training partner so people can see specifically how it is that I'm moving. Okay, with a large audience. So you always want to, as a teacher, attack not so much attack, but address the visual, the auditory, and the kinesthetic. So obviously you want to create a lot of narration. You want to infuse as much detail with your technique. You're explaining what you're doing and also why. And that's critical. Right. Sometimes I'll dialogue and I'll almost tell a story about how I first learned this technique from my friend Stephan, and we were doing this and yada yada yada. Right. So sometimes I'll put a story in, and sometimes the story really helps to rekindle a memory going forward. Explaining details, what I'm doing and why. That's critical. Obviously, I'm demonstrating. Sometimes I'll demonstrate the technique at speed first. And the reason why I demonstrate the technique at speed first is because it's almost like a mystery unraveling itself, because I do it at speed and then students will go, whoa,
the guy tapped.
The guy tapped. And exactly, how did Ritchie do that? Right? And I truly believe that if you're in the teaching business, you're also in the show business. Right? And when people see the entire technique, so the whole sequence, we addressed this before, so arm drag, back take, front trip, back take, arm bar, right? So I'll do that at speed, and then I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing today. First thing, the arm drag, right? And I'll break down how we did the arm drag. I'll do that. That creates involvement. So that's a visual, but it creates involvement. So the old saying, tell me I'll forget, show me and I may remember, involve me and I will understand. When people are involved, when they're like, okay, how did he do that? So the first part was the arm drag, and I will do the arm drag, and then I'll say something like, okay, team, what's the next move? Anybody remember? And I'll pause, and I'll wait for somebody to speak up. And people will be wrong, and that's fine. But as long as they're dialoguing in their head, they're questioning themselves. It's like, it was the arm bar that was next. Oh, or it was the back take. And I'm like, here we are, we're gonna go and do the back take. And then I'm like, okay, team, I demonstrate the back take and I infuse as much detail as possible, explain the reasons why we do it and what we're doing here. And then I'll be doing even more questioning. Now, kinesthetically, people are doing it with their training partners, right? And I'll go around, I do my very best to sometimes I'll jump in there and I'll actually do it to the person and I'll have them do it to me. Although I find it's a little bit easier. As a teacher, I just walk around and the person's out of position. I'll literally grab them and shove them into the right position, right? My old instructor, Mark Makita, he called it the tennis pro. It's kind of like this creepy thing that tennis pros do, right? Where, you're learning how to swing, do a forehand in tennis, and the tennis pro will wrap their arms around and do it. I do it with them, right? Well, in jiu-jitsu, it's not like I get on top of the person, but I will grab them. right? And I'll shove their hand where they're supposed to be, or I'll grab them and I'll steer them in the right direction or in the perfect position and whatnot. And if they're not heavy enough, I'll actually push on their chest. And as a teacher, that really helps. Right?
Well, this discussion of visual versus kinesthetic versus auditory makes me think about something that I've thought about in the past, which is sometimes you've got people who are really, really skilled at an activity. Let's constrain this to martial arts. At a martial art, be that stick fighting, boxing, jiu-jitsu, doesn't matter. They might have a championship title, but they're crappy instructors. And the question that was always asked is, would you rather learn boxing from Mike Tyson or from Mike Tyson's coach? And I think the answer is pretty clear, that you'd rather learn it from his coach, because probably I don't know about the new improved Mike. I haven't seen the stand-up show that he's doing or read the book yet.
I saw the show. It's pretty entertaining. Okay. You know, the Tyson's had an amazing life.
Okay.
You know,
well, let's talk about old Mike. A boxing lesson with old Mike would have been short and brutal and painful, and he probably wouldn't have learned a whole lot unless, you know, and maybe people who get good training with high-level jiu-jitsu guys who are very, very talented, but haven't put 1/10 the amount of time and energy into learning to teach the art that they spent learning to do the art. Maybe they're visual learners and they can just watch, you know, the 27-time world champion do an armbar, and they're like, oh, cool, I can do that.
Oh, for sure.
But the auditory learners and the kinesthetic learners and the people who need it broken down into steps, and I'm very much like that. I think it's probably an auditory kind of learner, where if you tell me, Stephan, the sky is blue, I'll say, Ritchie, are you telling me the sky is blue? And you'll say, yep, that's what I'm telling you. Having that dialogue around that, so it's a dialogue-based learning almost. It's like, I'm like, now I get it. And I've been very frustrated sometimes training with high-level guys who don't teach the way that I want to learn. And so it's taken some time and effort, and I actually wrote about this in my blog ages ago, that you have to find ways sometimes to ask your instructors questions in ways that they can answer them. If you just ask your instructor, hey, how do you do a sweep from the spider guard? They'll show you whatever is on their mind. They'll show you the latest upside down, inside out, crazy cross grip, reverse spider guard sweep.
Yeah, what's on their mind, right away.
But if you constrain them, you say, what are your top 3 sweeps? Or what do you think are the top 3 sweeps that get hit at the Mundials? Or what are the first 3 sweeps that a beginner should learn? Those are slightly different questions, but they have important differentiations. You probably will get different answers. So I think to some extent, it's also the student's responsibility to sometimes tease the information out of the instructor. But that's a whole different conversation.
And ultimately, so let's talk about the student's responsibility, and then we'll talk about the Tyson custom model thing, that whole paradox. Student's responsibility for teaching. Absolutely, I agree. It is your responsibility to paraphrase the information so that way it suits your learning style, your experiences, to attach certain movements to previous movements that you're familiar with, right? That is your role. That is your job as a student. And also to ask intelligent questions. If you are a teacher, I truly believe that you have a responsibility to dispense information, right? And dispense it in a way that is attainable to every single person in the room. So you need to force your instructors to be responsible, right? To be able to speak to you. And you want to do it in a polite manner. If your instructor is not so much a details-oriented person and they're all about, I'm happy to demonstrate this movement, 10 times until everybody gets it. But they're just not very articulate, or maybe they're not the greatest public speaker or whatever. That's fine. Perhaps you can go and intelligently ask questions. Ultimately, we all teach ourselves.
Right.
We all teach ourselves. So as a teacher, the role that I provide, the role that I've interpreted for myself, is that I'm more of a guide, in the sense that, hey, how do I get from here to New York? You would probably be able to go and stumble your way there. You're like, it's kind of in that direction. Eventually you'll be able to get there. However, I'm basically like Google Maps, in the sense that I will tell you exactly, what exit to take, which highway to take, how far away it is, how much gas you need to be able to go and get. And I'll be able to give you a detailed account as to how. But at the same time, you have to go and get in your car. You actually have to, press on the gas. You actually have to go and...
You have to do the drive.
You have to do the drive. Yeah. Okay? And you have to interpret my instructions. You have to interpret the directions that I provide as Google Maps, right? So, You still have to do it yourself. Let's talk a little bit about the Tyson thing. Hey, so first off is that as I explain as a teacher, as I explain the reasons why we're doing what we're doing, you really actually don't need it. You can go and perform at a super high level without a deep understanding of the biomechanics of like, what are the Newtonian physics behind this movement? You actually don't need to know. Tyson has, I mean, I don't know, right? I mean, I don't know.
Old Tyson.
Old Tyson. Okay, yeah.
Get away with anything.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, old Tyson. So Tyson in his 20s when he was like just the most impressive, most terrifying boxer, right? Just amazing. And did he really understand the biomechanics of the reasons why he needed to turn his right heel for the right hook? Did he really know? My guess, I don't know, but my guess is that he probably didn't. He probably couldn't give you an articulate reasons for the an articulate breakdown for the reasons why he was doing what he was doing. But man, could he throw a perfect right hook, and could he set it up? It was awesome. So you don't need to have a deep understanding in order to perform. So if your goal is just to go out there and win a bunch of gold medals and just to tap people out, do you need to have a deep understanding of the art? No, you don't. And it's just like
you need to have some stuff that works.
You need to have stuff that works. It's just like BJ Penn. BJ Penn. Once again, I've never met BJ Penn, and I don't no idea. My guess is that at 3.5 years of training jiu-jitsu, did he have the ability to go and perform at a super high level? Well, that's undoubtedly true. It's on the record. There's YouTube videos of it. But did he have a deep understanding as to why he put his hand here as opposed to over here? You know, I don't know. At 3.5 years, probably not. Did his instructors know that? You know, absolutely. I bet you they did, right? But because he was just so gifted, and sometimes the most gifted athletes do not translate to the best coaches. You know, like Wayne Gretzky is a great example. And I think this is the reason why I fell in love with teaching so much, is because I hated jiu-jitsu. I was never good at it, right? Like when I first started, I love jiu-jitsu now. Don't, you know, like send me emails. Richie hates jiu-jitsu. You know, no, I love jiu-jitsu. But when I first started it, it was daunting. It was unbelievably, I had a really tough time with it. And I was just not, it just, my body type, you know, like tall, skinny kid, you know, and it was awkward as hell and uncoordinated, and it was really difficult for me to learn. I think that's the reason why I had a deep understanding of it. It's just because that was the only way that I could get myself to do it. It's because if I understood where my hip was supposed to go, where my knee was supposed to go, where my foot was supposed to go, and the consequences of my foot turned up this way versus this way. Okay, great. Now if I do it this way, I can do it. It'll have a positive result, and I can duplicate it, right? So being cognizant of what I was doing and why really helped me. In which
it just took you 10,000 hours to get there.
Yes, absolutely. You know, holy crap, did it ever? You know, and as you know, it's a tough road. It's a long, long road, but one that helped me develop. I think, you know, huge character that I never would have developed on my own, sitting on my couch, you know, playing Xbox. Right? Playing World of Warcraft. And it's kind of the thing where it's like the great debate about jiu-jitsu and self-defense, right? Like, are you going to go and slap on a triangle choke on somebody, you know, if you're having a bar fight? Well, no, right? But then the whole argument is like, well, why do we do jiu-jitsu? Well, why do we study math? And why is it that we write essays when we were in high school and when we were post-secondary? Why is that? Well, in my opinion, it's the same reason why we do bench press. Do I do bench press because I think one day there's going to be an earthquake and there's going to be a concrete column on my chest, and good thing I can bench press 225 because that's exactly how much this column weighs, and you know that's my max one rep, and you know, I'll be able to go or deadlift. Am I going to have to save my dying child or something like that from this car that's trapped on top of? Well, no, I don't do that for those consequences. I do that because I lift weights because, one, I thoroughly enjoy it. It actually gives me joy, right? I feel better, right? I'm building muscle. I'm infusing my system with testosterone. You know, I'm building bone density. I'm doing all these things to benefit me. And the reason why I'm doing jiu-jitsu is not because I'm going to be walking down, you know, Robson Street and I'm going to have to slap on an omoplata.
Hey, get in my guard.
Yeah. Get in my guard. Yeah. No, or I'm gonna, do De La Hiva, do a De La Hiva sweep on somebody, right? In a nightclub. No, right? That doesn't make any sense. I do jiu-jitsu because it's tough and it's challenging and it's frustrating. And even though I say, I'm like, wow, you should really fall in love with the process of doing jiu-jitsu and the outcome, you should walk away from it. You should even be outcome dependent at all. Tapping out or tapping somebody else out should be immaterial to you. I say that but I'm certainly not there myself, man. Like, it's still frustrating.
Some of the time it's true. And that's all you can, we're not going to achieve perfection.
Right.
But it's a process.
But it's frustrating, and me dealing with that frustration, me learning something, exercising my brain, right? Putting myself, strapping on the white belt and emptying my cup and falling in love with being a student. This is the reason why I do jiu-jitsu, right? Because it builds character, right? And it's the reason why we do math. It's problem solving, and it allows me to think in a very logical manner. It's weight training.
I heard math.
Oh God, no! That's the reason why I do meth. No,
I was wondering
we are not promoters of doing methamphetamine.
I was wondering how you were going to tie that in. But, okay, well, Ritchie, we could keep going, and we probably will in another podcast.
This is cool, yeah.
But
this is awesome, Stephan.
Let's wind it down.
Sure.
You've got a lot of videos on YouTube, and you've got a blog that's got a lot of really good information on it. We talked about one of the articles. How do people find those resources if they want to see more of what you do and sort of your approach to doing martial arts and jiu-jitsu?
Thanks for throwing that my way, Stephan. So YouTube, lots of videos on YouTube, boxing, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu. We have like 400 videos, I think. So Infighting MMA is our channel. So if you just search for Infighting, so INFIGHTING MMA. So Infighting MMA, if you just search for that on YouTube, you'll be able to go and watch me teach a little bit. And if you want to see what I've written, you can go to our blog. It's on our website, infighting.ca/blog. You can just go to our website and you'll be able to look at the menu and be able to see the blog and flip it down and check out the articles and whatnot. Please comment if you like it or hate it. Like if I didn't conjugate a verb correctly in one of my articles, write it down. Say, hey, Ritchie, go back to grade 12 English. Please say that. Right? So, but yeah, this is awesome, Stephan. This is a real honor.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun.
Cheers.